Hi, and welcome to From Many People's Strength, the podcast that covers Saskatchewan politics and current events. My name is Cory, and my pronouns are he and him.
And I am David. My pronouns are they, them, or he, him.
Okay, so on our bi-weekly schedule.
Yeah. It was funny is, we were talking before we started recording about how, there's a couple articles that we're going to reference that sort of build on each other. It's kind of one of the aspects of covering 2 entire weeks. You have the article that says, "Oh, we're pretty sure this is going to happen," and then a week later, this happened.
Oh, geez, this happened.
Yeah, it's almost like scientists are good at predicting outcomes based on the data they're seeing.
Yeah, and
politicians are shitty at it.
It's almost like that.
Almost, right?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about both aspects of that.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll start with the scientists, and then we can talk about how the politicians are really bad at it when we talk about the budget.
Yeah.
So,
as well as a few other things about the budget that they've just decided to throw in there.
Let's jump into COVID.
It's from last week.
Right.
On the 29th. It came out the day after we recorded our last episode. As Regina ICU swells with COVID-19 cases, younger people are taking up more beds. And essentially, it's an article where they're talking about the increase in the ICU capacity they were at 115% capacity as of this as of this article. They had 17 out of their normal 20 beds, and then they had an additional 10 surge beds that were all filled up. So you had 27 out of 30 beds with COVID-19 patients. Yep. And they were talking about how this is the product of these COVID patients. While usually patients stay in ICU for 1-2 days, maybe 4 days max, COVID patients are in ICU sometimes for weeks.
Yeah.
So that's not good.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's reminding me of how before all of this, before COVID, if you were on the interwebs, as they were, listening to people talk about vaccinations and the anti-vax movement, sort of where that came from.
Right.
One of the points that gets brought up is it is a testament to how good vaccines are that the anti-vax movement can exist.
Right.
Because we have forgotten about smallpox. We have forgotten about the horrors of polio, right? These are things that we don't have to live with. I think we're seeing a microcosm of that with COVID. Yeah. We're a year into this thing. We're getting numb. People are just not paying attention. And so, yes, I know so-and-so's uncle passed away, or grandfather, or kid, or who, we've heard those stories. And I think people are suffering from sort of an empathy overload that's too many people reach this point where they don't have the empathy reserves left anymore.
Yeah. And
go, I miss my friend. I'm going to go visit, or I need to do this, or and I've, I think we're both broken records on this at this point. And because I see it daily. There are these gray areas where people are just skirting the edge. And there's the blatant folks, right? There are definitely 100% the people who don't, who believe this is a hoax, or believe that if you drink enough olive oil, it'll go away, or whatever. So there is that facet. But I think it's not just the anti-vaxxers or the anti-maskers or the COVID hoaxers that are driving this. I think, and I've talked about my ex a lot when it comes to this, and because I'm so frustrated. But it's someone who believes in COVID, believes it's real, believes masks are important, believes social distancing is important, believes all of the lockdown measures are important. That everyone should follow them, but still is visiting a friend this afternoon. Because, that's fine. It doesn't really count. That's not really breaking. We're going to go for a walk, and it's outside, so it doesn't count. Right. But I'm looking at the weather, and 3 hours in, they're not outside walking anymore, right? Like it got windy, it got snowy, so we went inside, but it's fine. Like we were intending to walk. And, I went over to my mom's for supper, but it's okay because she's in my bubble. And then I went over to my girlfriend's because she's in my bubble. And I went over to my brother's because he's in my bubble. And eventually that's not a bubble anymore. And and other people are doing it. I want to make this all about my personal stuff, but like you hear this all the time and I've talked about this too. Like we can't live perfect lives, but we're getting really bad at determining where that line is, where the gray stops. And I think that's part of what is driving this.
I mean, to kind of deter it from being all about the one person as an example, like my father, he said he lists off the places he goes and he's going to this place and he's meeting this number of people and those people, like his bubble maybe is small and he's only going to 3 places, but they're public places and he's going there and meeting people that he doesn't live with. And my daughter is similar, she's got her friends and of course they're teenagers. They absolutely want to see their friends. Yeah. And they go to school all day together. They wear masks, but then they go out for lunch and then they take off their masks and they're eating. I mean, she says, we're eating outside. It's fine. Well, I don't know. Is it?
And I even find myself, I'm pretty stringent about this. And I this last 2 weeks, I did my grocery shopping online. So I haven't had physical contact with anyone other than my kids and my co-parent, which is enough. But, I think back over the last couple months, was I as diligent in the grocery store as I was 10 months ago? Probably not. I still tried to be. But when I got, I think to myself, I get in the grocery store and I'm thinking about my routine. So I go in, do the hand sanitizer, but I did the hand sanitizer on my hands, but I make a specific point of thoroughly wiping down the cart. Well, I don't have to because the store themselves does it, but the store themselves thinking, maybe
customers are going to do it. So
customers are going to do it, right? So are people getting, and they're probably not, I'm probably fine. Am I maybe 5 feet from the person in front of me in the grocery store instead of the 8 that I used to be? Because they said 6, but I made it, gave it an extra 2 just to be on the safe side. Now they said 6, but it's 5, probably fine. We're all doing stuff like that to some degree or another, I think. I try very hard not to, but I think if I'm going to be honest and hold myself to the same level of accountability, I kind of hope others are holding themselves to. I'm sure there are areas where I've gotten more slack, and you see it in the numbers.
Yeah, that's right.
And now we're racing against the vaccine, and hopefully we can get everyone vaccinated before things get even worse. But you can't say before things get too bad because they're already too bad. They are already at the breaking point. So
yeah, that's right. And that sort of brings us to our other article, that building on the same thing. Yeah, it is very bad. Regina doctors say the situation in COVID-19 ICUs is dire. Last week we're at 115% capacity. And then suddenly the numbers have gone up. So where we used to have 27 last week, now we have 31 patients in the ICU that are COVID related. So, we're already we're over our, just with COVID patients, we're over our capacity.
And again, this impacts not just COVID patients, right? So this means if someone has a heart attack, if someone gets a concussion, if someone has a diabetic reaction, like all of these things where you would normally need an ICU bed, those beds are full. So it has a domino effect, and we need to get back to that same level of diligence that we had a year ago. That light is at the end of the tunnel. We can see it. I'm checking the Saskatchewan website literally daily to watching the threshold for booking vaccinations drop. It's at 50 as of today. Yeah. So I'm hoping, I'm 44, so I'm hoping within a week or so I can book an appointment to go get vaccinated. And so wait this thing out, but like we need to be better while waiting till we hit that point. So
I
don't know what there's much more to say on that front other than, our hospitals are bursting. And the other point, and again, this feeds back into the budget that we'll talk about more later, is this is also what happens when you have 20 years of austerity. And I'm saying 20, I'm not just holding the Sask party accountable. This is a decade of one and then a decade of the other, of austerity and cuts that we were doing okay leading into COVID. And we didn't have wiggle room. We didn't have a cushion if something went wrong. Yeah. And this is what happens. This is what happens when you don't keep a spare tire in your trunk and you get a flat. This is what happens when you don't have extra capacity within your healthcare system, and then you end up needing extra capacity. So
yeah, that's right. And in a sense, I mean, okay, this ties into other articles we're going to discuss on this, but in a sense, like we see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we need to have like an actual pulling back of freedoms, I guess, quote unquote. We need to actually do a more firm lockdown with firmer rules. And that also means that we need better support from our governments for people who aren't going to be able to go to work or who have to stay home to homeschool their children or, various things. And that's just, it's not a thing that our government is willing to do at this point, which is extremely frustrating.
The fact that the virus has changed, does our vaccine plan need to change along with it?
Right. And I mean, obviously, this is a headline that I think one can say yes to, right? The virus changed. Should Saskatchewan's vaccine plan do the same? There's a young person who recently got it who basically said, this is one of the scariest things I've ever had to deal with. And Cardinal 34 believes he caught COVID while working as a bartender and server, which also leads into other stories about this.
And we can talk about that at the same time here.
Yeah.
Because they're all tied into each other. The data is showing now that, workplaces are where this is spreading most.
Yep. That's right.
This isn't a bunch of lefty liberals speculating. This is data.
We're not just saying it, even though a lot of lefty people were the first ones saying it. The data is absolutely there. This article says over 50%, but I think it's closer to 66 to 70% of our declared outbreaks are in workplaces.
Because how do you keep, how do you maintain COVID lockdown restrictions, et cetera, for a year without support and making $11 an hour?
Right.
Right. And again, this is not to disparage anyone making a minimum wage. I 100% reject the even concept of the term unskilled labor. There's no such thing. Yep. But we're paying people $11 an hour to put their life at risk, and not giving proper training. And I do not blame the workers for this in any way, shape, or form. If things. We talked about the grocery cart, right? I said, no, I'm sure they are doing it fine, but
yeah,
what if they're not, right? And I don't like. I don't know how we can say these workers are not worthy of protection and not worthy of a living wage, while then also expecting them to continue working while we have this pandemic occurring. Like it just, there's such a disconnect between the various moving parts.
that's right.
So
it's pretty bizarre. We recently got there's an alert, a service alert from a town hall with a bunch of data in it, and I mean, Saskatchewan is not in good shape as far as COVID is concerned. We have, and they're projecting it to be like really even worse. So,
yeah.
I know,
we are Saskatchewan wide, and we sometimes end up focusing on Regina more than the rest of the province. But I was listening to Kyle Anderson, the I always have trouble with epidemiologist out of Saskatoon who works at the University of Saskatchewan up in Saskatoon, and he's been just fantastic and very, very clearly outlining data and information. Because this is what he does.
right?
He teaches this stuff for years, and now is teaching all of us this stuff.
Yeah.
But was talking about how pretty much everything you're seeing in Regina, you're going to start seeing in Saskatoon in about a 2 to 3 week delay. So there's about a 2 to 3 week lag between what's happening in Regina and what will hit Saskatoon. So we're now at this spot where of those ICU beds province wide, it was something like over half, close to 2/3, I think, were in Regina.
Yeah.
And so the province is at capacity, with Regina making up the bulk of that. But then if you add in Saskatoon having the like,
it's not going to
literally bursting at the seams.
Yeah.
So there was an MLA from the NDP who in the legislature was calling on his colleagues to be better about making sure they wear their masks, like people would do in any workplace.
Yeah.
And then he mentioned while talking that he is immunocompromised. So for him, this isn't a political thing. This is literally, he could die. He has a medical condition that has him immunocompromised. If he contracts COVID, there is he very likely could die. And when he was saying it, the Sask Party MLAs laughed.
Yeah, it's. I'll even play it here.
Okay.
It's just a short video.
It just doesn't make sense. They don't care about bravado. They don't care about ego. They want their moms and dads to be safe. And there's a big reason for that, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'm sure that you and many of my fellow members here notice that I'm not just wearing one mask, I'm wearing 2 masks. And I'll be doing that every time I enter this building. And the reason for that is that I am an immune-compromised person. The recent changes in my health status are deeply personal, but it's something that's given me a new perspective on what the last year has been like for other folks who are at greater risk of contracting COVID-19. I want to thank the members opposite who choose to wear their masks in here. I see it, I notice it, and I think that's important. What message does it send for those who are choosing otherwise? What message does it send to the people of Saskatchewan when leaders in government don't lead by example? What message does it send when cabinet ministers go on warm vacations during the holidays while everyone else is required to stay home? What does it say when every indoor public space in the province is under a mask?
Yeah, so that's where it cuts off.
Yeah. He just goes on to say, as every indoor space is under a mask mandate. And
yeah.
Our leaders aren't. What
does it say? It says that they don't actually care.
Yeah.
Right? And the people who laughed at him when he said he was immunocompromised, I mean, that's not just not caring, that's outright callousness. Like, how can you, as a person who's supposed to represent other people, feel so little empathy for somebody who is in a vulnerable position who you work with?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, they're on the opposite team or whatever, but you work with them. Like,
I don't understand it. Like I
care so little. Yeah.
I cannot wrap my head around that. I literally just, because if it was, I'm trying to think of circumstances where it's the other way around. I just, how can you openly laugh at and mock a coworker for their medical condition?
No, exactly.
I don't get it. I really, really, and I would like at some point this idea that conservatives are, good old, help your neighbor out, car breakdown. Oh, where could you, like,
apparently not, right?
That's gone. Like maybe in the 1950s. I think even then we should be honest that was a very small subset of the population that they felt that way towards. But even that is gone now, I think. The idea that, they may not have, they may disagree on policy, but their heart's in the right place. Some of them, sure. But the ones who are laughing, no. Yeah. Like that's gone. That I don't want to hear conservatives talking about morality again. That's done. You've lost it. You've lost that
you
card.
Do not have the moral high ground.
That is gone now. Like that. I'm sorry. That's been it has been a right-wing talking point my entire lifetime that, the right are upstanding moral folk who just disagree. And, they have a different framework of where their ethics are, where their morals are. So for their ethical framework, it's the pulling up by the bootstraps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a different ethical framework, but they're moral and ethical within their own ethical framework. But not when you're mocking people for possibly dying if they contract a disease, not if you're actively choosing to not take steps necessary to keep your coworkers safe when they ask you to.
Not to bring up the U.S. and their situation too much, but it's similar to, it's the same idea. We saw that when Trump was out there and he's mocking a disabled reporter, and making fun of him because of his disability, not for anything he said. He's not even addressing anything that he did or said or reported on. Yeah. He's actively just mocking his disability, and people in the crowd cheered. And it's that same mentality that's laughing at their fellow MLA in the Saskatchewan legislature.
Yeah. And then the supporters denying it happened. Because I guarantee you there are people who are going to watch that clip and go, oh, well, it's not really, and somehow justify it, right? They weren't really laughing. It was, or it was just 3 or 4 of them, or it was, you're just looking for something to be angry about. I guarantee there will be people saying that.
Yep.
I didn't go look at the comments. I probably should have.
But it will tell you something that the Reddit thread got locked by the moderators because it veered too far off of like actual discussion. Yeah. So
the moral high ground's gone.
Yeah.
And not everyone. Like there are people who would identify as conservatives who aren't laughing.
Yeah, that's right.
But I want to hear more from them calling out their own.
Yeah.
And saying like, this isn't okay. And not not doing the, oh, well, not all conservatives, and speaking outward to non-conservatives, speaking inward to their own people, saying, hey,
make your team better.
Cut it out. This is not acceptable.
Yeah.
And I think we need to hear that. And I say the same thing to the left when the left is pulling bullshit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm probably biased on this, but I see a lot more of the left calling each other out for various things.
Almost to too great a degree sometimes.
Yeah, almost to too much of a, yeah. to the point where it's actually a meme that the left eats itself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wasn't entirely sure what to make of it. Ideally, this would be a good thing, right? But what are the ways I haven't considered that this can go wrong?
I first heard of Clare's Law a little over a year ago, before COVID. I was attending a presentation on. I was on an International Women's Day, and it was about this.
Okay.
They were talking about various forms of gender-based violence, and the person giving the presentation was very, very excited about this law. Viewed it as a huge win for victims of domestic violence and victims of intimate partner violence. So I agree that I think there's risk for abuse because you and I both know.
Don't trust the cops.
Yeah.
Okay, but
this is one of those ones where I think it's a good law. It's unfortunate that the police are the ones that are administering it.
Yeah, that makes sense,
right? Because the idea behind it, and there's different versions, different fine details. I need to, now that the RCMP are involved, how that all works. The idea behind it was, and she was talking about a dad who got a bad feeling about his daughter's new boyfriend. Just something in his gut was telling him this is wrong. And was able to go take advantage of Clare's Law, get details. And sorry, he couldn't get details. Sorry, let me backtrack on that. She could have gotten details, but what he can do is go to the police and say, hey, I have concerns. And then the police can go proactively reach out to the daughter and say, hey, your boyfriend beat up his last girlfriend.
That actually sounds pretty good. The thing I would be concerned about, I would be concerned if every dad who was concerned could go and get background information on the boyfriend of their daughters.
Right, exactly. But I think in this case, but again, where the risk factor comes in is every dad is concerned about their daughter's boyfriend, gets the police involved. Now, are the police just going to be reaching out to the daughter in question, or is there going to be an interaction between the police and this person? And again, if they are an abuser, we want people to be safe, but at the same,
that's the thing, right? You want people to be safe, but also if I could see a scenario where
how many parents, let's put the cards on the table. How many parents are going to see their daughter having an Indigenous boyfriend and going to the cops?
Right.
That's their only reason for being suspicious.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think it is something that in aggregate is probably a positive step. I am nervous that it is administered by the cops. And we do need to be aware that the law doesn't require someone to have been found guilty of a crime. Just it's if there were, there are certainly, and you have this really shitty intersection between two different competing and conflicting rights and conflicting ideals. So it's not a simple thing. I think, like I said, I think in taken in its entirety, the law is probably more good than bad.
Right.
I think I think the dealing with the issue of intimate partnered violence and gendered violence is important enough and significant enough, and we don't do enough to address it, that taking steps to address it is important. But we need to be also very, very cautious of the fact that the police are not always used as a force for good.
Very diplomatic way of saying
it. And this isn't swatting, but it
right.
I think we need to be aware that when we start entering gray areas around, social class and race and how that impacts things and how that impacts the implementation of the law, best intentions can often lead to less than ideal outcomes. So,
Saskatchewan commits to creating a police watchdog, but the details are unclear. The province earmarked $287,000, which doesn't sound like a lot, in the 2021-2022 budget to develop an independent serious incident response team. Saskatchewan Justice Minister didn't say when it would be operational, and apparently it's going to start. They're starting working on it right now. I mean, I'm all for
better
watchdogs.
Than nothing.
Yeah, that's right.
So that strikes me as one full-time person plus one or two part-time and an office, maybe that.
Yeah,
like that's
very small
budget. And I know I know our listeners are very smart, but I know there are some people out here going to hear that number and think, oh, well, if you're paying people $50,000 a year, that's 5 people. Like, no, that's not how this works. Because there's office space and all sorts of bureaucracy. Like, I would suspect that is one, like that dollar amount gets you one person, maybe two, if the second one is primarily clerical, because you're probably and me being jaded, they're probably going to hire a former cop to fill the role. But if they don't, like, let's say they're looking, like, they're probably going to look at a lawyer or former lawyer, or someone who is credentialed. You're probably looking at the person in charge of this is making, I'm possibly 6 figure. Right? Yeah, I would think so. If not, probably at least 70, 80, 90. Or like if you get a former cop doing it, like cops make a lot of money. There's not going to be a lot of incentive for a cop to take this job full time at $60,000 a year.
No, that's right.
They just won't do it. Other than if they're doing it as like a hobby. Not actually a hobby, but like,
yeah, but it's a side
they're
gig.
taking it to be the person to look out for their buddies. That's right.
So hopefully there's no, it's not a former cop that's in charge.
I would hope so. But we could place a wager on that, because I would give 50-50 odds on that.
Yeah, I would believe that. I
would think at least there's a 50-50 shot. And if we're like, for full transparency, this isn't the only money that goes towards police accountability. Like, this is an additional watchdog that is going to report into the Saskatchewan Public Complaints Commission. So the Saskatchewan Public Complaints Commission still does exist, which they oversee a lot more than just the cops. So having a dedicated individual within that office.
In this article, it says that other watchdogs in Canada require roughly $1 million annually to operate. Although Saskatchewan's population is a little bit smaller, so perhaps our police force is a little bit smaller, we could probably cut down a little bit from $1 million, but $287,000 seems so small.
Yeah, it really does. I'm at a certain point, like, you do run into economies of scale. Ultimately, if another province can get away with, one person making 110 and 4 other people reporting to them, that make 60 or 50, sure. But like, you still need the one person at the top, like even if you're cutting all 4 of the others.
Yeah, that's right.
So anyways, it'll be interesting to see. This is also one of those things where they can announce it, and then they can study it, and then they can talk about it, and then they can restudy it, and then there's an election, so it gets tabled till after the election, and then, right? So I will believe it when I see it.
Yeah, that's right. It's an announcement, but who knows?
Yeah.
Regina Police preparing to launch Project Speed, where they crack down on speeders and street racers emboldened by warm weather and dry streets, which obviously isn't happening today.
Not tonight. Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah.
I have a window to outside where I record this, so I can see it continuing to snow. Sweet Jesus. All right. Back to the drag
bad
racing.
news. But
of all the things to crack down on, like,
sure.
Yeah. Like, again, I think there are other ways that are non-police related to address it. I have said time and time again, if you really want to be tough on crime, start with road related crime.
Yep.
Because that is typically where you are going to find more people of affluence. Like, again, you still run into the issues where essentially tack on an extra 10 kilometers an hour based on the color of the skin of the person driving, as far as whether the cops will stop someone or not.
Yep.
But
yep, generally.
Like, this is an issue. I don't understand, like, unless there is an immediate imminent danger, why you are pulling someone over and searching their car, or like having an in-person interaction.
Right.
And that isn't something that is addressed after that, or if there is imminent danger, like, if what we're trying to avoid is imminent danger, then we shouldn't have traps. We should have things that are clearly marked and obvious. Like, if you want to slow people down, don't hide the speed trap, make it obvious.
Yeah, that's right. Put up a big sign that says you are going this fast. Cameras operational.
Yeah. Right. And like, that will slow people down. And having something in place for when people continue to be dangerous in spite of that. You got to assume if someone's, what was that story from a few weeks ago, 45,000 in parking fees or whatever.
That's right.
If they're willing to have 49 or 45,000 or whatever it was in parking fees, then I'm sure they're willing to just keep speeding and not pay a ticket as well. But
yeah, and then when you take their license, they'll just keep going anyway.
Yeah. So again, though, I think addressing road-related incidents is probably of all the things cops do, is not the one that I'm the most chuffed about. Again, is as long as we're recognizing that, like anything, the police have intervene in a situation. I can guarantee you could look at the data and see that it is not an equally applied law. But.
Yeah. It's not necessarily like speeding related, but when you mentioned like, what are the situations when somebody might get pulled over and searched, is okay, I'm a regular customer at Fire and Flower here in Regina. So I go and I buy pot twice a week. And until recently, I could just say, no, I don't need the receipt. I'll just go, whatever. But recently they started saying, no, make sure to take your receipt, because they've been pulling people over and checking for pot. And like, I don't know if this is a thing that, like, I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
Police just pulling you over and then saying, can I look in your car for weed that you bought at the store but don't have a receipt for?
Yeah. Oh man, that's weird.
Yeah. So
I remember when I was a lad. So this is going back 25 years, so I don't think anyone's going to come try and sue me for libel or slander because they're all not doing it no more. But I worked at a bar, and everyone left that bar drunk and drove afterwards.
Right.
Like all the customers. And I always wondered why cops didn't just like drive like at 2:30 a.m. on a Friday and Saturday night, go to any bar parking lot, and set up a breathalyzer there. Or again, you need to have reasonable cause, but watching a drunk person get in a car and start driving, that should count as reasonable cause, you would think.
If they are at the entrance to a parking lot, that's 100% reasonable cause, right?
I would think so, especially if you're watching.
Like I know he came out of the bar,
and so. I've never heard of maybe they do that. I don't know, but that never seems to be where the checks
always seems
are.
Down the middle of Albert Street or something.
I also know that the bar I was at had a illegal poker game in the back that many police attended. So, so
that's why.
Yeah. So, I am curious as to how frequent things like that occur, whereas they're not attending similar events at the pot shop yet. So that's all I got to say on that.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And again, this is the way the world works, and I understand it, and the fact that so much of this is just. It seems that there are a lot of people who understand that this is the way the world works, and some of us are frustrated, and some of us just don't see it as a problem.
We're back on the fun statues.
Yeah, we won't spend too long on this. We talked a fair bit last week, and I don't think neither of our opinions have changed. What's changed is City Council voted.
Yes.
Put in storage.
Yeah, I watched this. I both watched this City Council meeting where this was discussed, and I was reading Paul Deschain's live tweeting of it in case there was something I missed, because usually there is. But yeah, Regina City Council voted 7-4 to see the statue of Sir John A. Macdonald taken down and put into storage. There was some attempted amendments to this, whatever you call it, motion, and they got defeated narrowly. But they were both like, no, let's just keep it up and keep debating until we figure out what to do with the statue. And then there was another one about, I can't even remember.
Essentially, like, we're going to get rid of it, but not quite yet type motions.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We will, just not right now. And of course, there's the often discussed, but what about public opinion? We haven't even spoken to the public about this yet. We need to get more input from the public. And so on and so forth. So, which, I mean, whatever, I guess. But
that goes both ways. I've argued the same thing when the right is doing stuff that I don't like, and it seems like the public doesn't like.
Fair.
I don't know, I'm not sure what the public opinion on this would be. At some point though, you need to, we don't live in a direct democracy. We live in a representative democracy. We elect people to make decisions.
That's right. So when they make a decision, that's how it goes.
Yeah. So I'm glad they made this decision this time.
Something that I thought was interesting in this article is Mayor Sandra Masters was discussing it, and she said, "We are not interested in erasing history. This is not cancel culture." And I agree. However,
the fact that she needed to say it,
the fact that she needed to say it is frustrating.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fox News.
Yeah. Well, it's The people who rail against cancel culture are usually the first to cancel people, though, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Tarina Shaw's on this list, and I think I've talked about this before, where she put up a problematic Facebook post, and I called her out on it and got blocked. And politely, I was super polite about it.
Right.
I like it was because she put up a Facebook post praising a woman who was super homophobic and transphobic, and she's talking about this was a giant of Canadian journalism, and like also someone who was horribly transphobic. But all I said is how, like, my question was like, how do you reconcile your support for this individual with claiming to be in support of diversity and inclusion within the city, and you claim to have supported Queen City Pride. How do you reconcile that support with praising someone who has a history of
Right.
really vocal homophobia and transphobia? And she blocked me. So I'm just like, at what point is it cancel culture? At what point is it you just don't want to answer questions? So the government is elected to make decisions about things like statues, and I'm glad they made the decision they did. I will judge my city councilors who voted against it or who voted for taking it down, but I will judge them based on their actions. Like, that's how representative democracy is supposed to work. You know, before the election, you make the best judgment you can based on what they say they're going to do. And then if they run for re-election, you base your decision on whether to vote for them again based on what they did do.
Yeah, that's right.
So, all right.
So also,
similar for both the street and the pool.
A symbolic step, a group calls on City of Regina to rename Dudney Avenue.
Yep.
So this is cool. Like, they want it to be called Buffalo Avenue. What?
The pool is getting renamed because that's already been decided. The street still they're talking about, so there's nothing. But Buffalo Meadows Pool is going to be the name of the pool instead of Dudney. For the street, there's a group asking the city to consider it, and I think again the current city council that we have is probably amenable to it.
This is they're. We have what I would consider a relatively progressive city council.
Mm-hmm.
And I quite like that. So.
Yeah.
And actually the entire council voted on the pool change name.
Right. Well, like, Germany doesn't have Goebbels Boulevard.
Right.
Right? Like, and you don't need to have the names of people who perpetrated genocide on your streets to remember that. And I would argue the fact that we have a street named after someone who perpetrated a genocide is probably an indication that if naming things after people from history is there to help us learn from history, it's not working. Because if it was working, we wouldn't want streets named after them.
I think that's a fair argument. I think that you think
right?
That's successful.
Do like I would actually probably wager that if we change the name of Dudney Avenue to something other than Dudney, people are more likely to know who Dudney was and the horrifying things he did.
Yep. That's right.
So, like, that's if knowing history and not forgetting history is your goal, thank you for supporting changing the name.
Yes.
Because that is how we would remember history.
Yep. Because we
don't
celebrate genocide.
Don't celebrate genocide. That should be a thing that we
should agree on,
right? Like, that should be.
Yeah.
We don't
do that.
No one has Hitler Street.
No.
So, and we can remember that he existed. No one has forgotten that Hitler existed because there isn't Hitler Boulevard.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, it's and like so many of these things, you're going to hear he shouldn't be judged by modern day morality. He should be judged by the morality of his time.
We beat the shit out of that last week.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Dewdney was a shitty person at the time. Like he was horrifying by 19th century standards. So
even just like John A. Macdonald was.
Yeah.
A little bit deeper look, perhaps at the budget.
I say a little bit deeper look, but I don't.
Yeah.
This of all again, I always say we might not have much to say, and then I do. We've talked about this already because it was
predicted.
There were spoilers. They bumped up the because I think they said no balanced budget for 5 years. A couple months
26.
ago or a month ago. Now it's 7 years or 6 years. So like. During the election, they said it was 3 years. Then they said 5. Now they're saying 6 to 7 or 6, whatever. So, and they're not giving a projection for 25, 26. It's sort of like deficit. We're not going to tell you. And then no deficit. I'm like, magic.
So somehow within that term there, it's going to change.
Again, you and I agree that deficits aren't inherently evil. There is no moral, there's no moral implication of a deficit budget. It is not an evil act to have a deficit. Where my frustration comes in is what they are now saying is inevitable is worse than what they were mocking the NDP for saying they were going to do.
Well, and I think you said it well last time with when we were talking about population. Like, you don't get to set the benchmark and then fail it and then declare that the benchmark didn't mean anything.
Right.
Like the Sass party has been the party that said deficits were bad. The conservative movement says deficits are bad. And then they have deficits. And then they say, oh, but it's okay when we do it. You don't get to do that. It's just not how it works.
Or apparently it is. And apparently enough people don't care.
And apparently it does work.
Because what they'll do is say, oh, but if the NDP had been elected, it would have been worse.
Yes, that's
right.
No evidence to say that. But
no. In fact,
say it.
Evidence to the contrary.
Right.
Because the NDP, the last time they were in office, took over with massive deficits because the Grant Devine government got voted out because of scandal, but also had a massive deficit.
Yeah.
And the NDP took a massive deficit and turned it into a surplus.
Yeah, exactly.
So, again, doing methods you and I don't
disagree
100% agree on, right? But
but they did the thing.
Yeah, they did the thing. Well, there's the old expression: only Nixon can go to China. It seems like only left-wing governments can cut deficits.
Yeah.
The right-wing governments seem to be incapable of doing it. But left-wing governments seem to have enough political capital that they can implement austerity without the sky falling. So, and I don't conservative governments should be able to do it, but it's because they're typically cutting taxes and cutting spending at the same time. So
they seem to be cutting all over the place. So I don't know why they are still have a deficit. But
no,
okay,
the budget itself, there's nothing. I think there's nothing huge that jumps out. A couple things here and there. But like the things that are sort of jumping out, there's a specific one that I'm angry about, but it's a small thing overall with the budget. The fee for electric vehicles.
Yeah. It's not like they're going to get rich off of this $100 and $50 fee on electric vehicles. But why are you okay? Maybe this goes along with their denial of climate change.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But they're actively disincentivizing people from going to electric vehicles.
Right.
There's something broken in our province when this is the way that we are running.
When I bought mine, the programs are changed now, but every single jurisdiction, every single jurisdiction in North America, at the time I bought my electric vehicle, had a direct financial incentive for buying electric new.
Okay.
Because there was a federal one in the U.S. and I think every province except for one or two. Sorry, every province except for Saskatchewan, I think. There may have been one or two others, but I think it was actually every province except Saskatchewan had an incentive where if you bought a new electric vehicle, there was a significant rebate that you would get. I think $7,500 was the highest of them, but like thousands of dollar rebate that was given to you by the government.
Okay.
Saskatchewan didn't have one. So I essentially had to buy a vehicle used because the rebate's already factored into the price if you're buying a used one.
Okay.
Had we had that same rebate every other province had in the United States had, I would have bought a new one in Saskatchewan. I 100% would have bought a new electric vehicle in Saskatchewan. I would have had it shipped here or bought through one of the local dealerships. I would have gotten my electric vehicle here. But instead, I bought one that was a year and a half old out of Portland because they would have, like, whoever bought it initially would have paid, X amount, 30 something grand, got a $7,500 rebate right off the hop, which instantly depreciates the vehicle by that same amount to a large degree because no one's going to pay for a used what they're paying for a new, which is why I was able to get the used one for the price I did. But if I could have just bought it new in Saskatchewan, I would have, because then I would have gotten the rebate, etc.
Yeah.
The reason I bring that up and the reason I'm sort of bringing in the personal element is it speaks to the lack of economic understanding that the Conservatives seem to have, or the Sask Party seems to have, around the fact that green technology drives the economy as well. Like these are things that are economic drivers. It was a different. Let me rephrase that. Not they don't seem to understand green technology. They don't seem to understand that things they are ideologically opposed to also help the economy.
Right.
The film credit was the one from years and years ago, but that was another one where they cut the film credit and killed an entire industry in the province. Massive economic downside.
That.
Yeah, right? Like huge economic impact of doing so. We lost massive jobs, massive investment, like massive tourism dollars. Like this is there were movies being filmed in Saskatchewan that generated interest in the province that dissipated. Again, this is going back years talking about, but same sort of philosophy here. There's something something they are ideologically opposed to. Remove the economic drivers, or in this case, add red tape and fees and fines. Like this is not fiscally conservative in quotation mark, right? Adding taxes, adding fees, actively disincentivizing economic growth and economic activity in a emerging growth industry, because electric vehicles are going to be a thing. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon and for the rest of our lives.
But not in Saskatchewan, goddammit.
We'll have horse and buggies still, damn you.
Yeah, that's right. Horse and buggy province charges $100 and $50 fee to cars.
Yeah. I'm sure there was. I'm sure there were places who did that, right? The budget as a whole, like there's no big ticket job stimulus. There are some economic supports that are labeled as COVID supports that are rebates. A lot of it is energy related. A lot of it's business credits. Government's paying for cleaning up oil wells rather than making the oil companies do it. Most of that's pretty boilerplate. Other than, again, this is the budget that they said the NDP couldn't budget or balance, and they can't either. The other one I think you have up on the screen there is they cut the Department for Studying Climate Change.
Of course.
Yeah. So
they don't even believe it's a real thing that's happening. So, of course, what's the point in having a policy or studying it or any of that?
Yeah.
But yes.
The funny thing is, if you call them climate change deniers, they'll say, no, we believe in it.
Oh, yeah. We just don't believe it does anything. The province rejected funding for the safe consumption sites, which is, I think, pretty frustrating. I think like Prairie Harm Reduction does good work. They actually can. I think they're the kind of place that they can actually say we have saved lives, right? Like this is, I don't know if they'll be able to now, but until now they have offered free training and naloxone kits at Prairie Harm Reduction. So you can go get certified to administer naloxone to a friend who's overdosing. Yeah. So I don't know. So they literally save lives, but we're not going to bother giving them any money.
And again, this is one of those ones where during the debates, harm reduction came up. The idea of safe injection sites came up, and Mo said all the right things. And then all talk, no deliver. So, yeah.
One of the things that blows me away about this lack of funding to something like this, well, and these other increased fees and cutting spending is like, okay, so you've got this giant deficit anyway. Like, what is this building going to cost you? What is the Prairie Harm Reduction going to cost you in a year? That you suddenly can't afford to do this in a $2 billion deficit?
It's actually not like, it actually doesn't even cost you anything over the life of your budget, because what you'll find, because again, research has been done on this. The money, like this is black and white dollars and cents shit. It is cheaper to prevent someone from overdosing than it is to cover the cost of emergency health care. Like that, like harm again. And I always say this, let's take compassion, empathy, kindness, and morality off the table for a moment. Let's not even do, like, I think you should do this because of all of those things. But when you take all of those things off the table, and even if you are a cold-hearted, evil person, I guess if you're a cold-hearted, evil person, you would just let people die in the streets and not give them emergency health care. But recognizing that you live in a society,
and you're obligated.
You're obligated to give people emergency health care if they show up at the ER. Again, every person you prevent from having an overdose is one less person you're having to deal with in an emergency institution. And like, if you do the math, and I know this is complicated math, the volunteer at Prairie Harm Reduction or full-time employees who are probably making, my guess is between $30,000 to $50,000 a year, maybe a little more for the ones who are have specific medical training, but you're dealing with the volunteers, office space, minimal costs, who can help eliminate overdoses for a large group of people and provide services for a large group, are probably costing you less than a doctor, multiple nurses, ER equipment, ambulances, hospitals, ICU beds that we've already established
are full.
Like, I can guarantee you the math on, do a comparison of what a volunteer at a harm reduction clinic makes versus an ER doctor in the general hospital makes. You can do that math. Even conservatives can do that math. It's not like it's the harm that's being reduced is not just the harm to the individual lives. The harm that's being reduced is the harm to the economy or the budget, if you want to be cold-hearted and callous about it. But they want people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps.
You could even frame it in such a way, you could say, not helping people harms all of society. So, you can say that.
You can. And it's true. But it's so frustrating when the moral and ethical choice aligns with the fiscally responsible choice, and people still reject it.
On the episode, Running a Predictable Deficit, Doss Richard said, other than the global recession affecting oil consumption temporarily, we were discussing the loss in income or revenue for Federated Co-op Limited, or whatever the hell it's called. Yep. So he says, your comments give the impression global usage of oil wasn't still breaking records annually up until COVID. Efficiency improvements are amazing and lovely. So is green energy, but let's not pretend the globe isn't near peak oil consumption anytime soon. So I assume, like, if it was on a graph, he's seeing it still going up, right?
Right.
So, and assumes we're not at the peak yet.
Right, but we were talking about oil prices. Like production, right. You're right. Production, like there's a few different aspects. There's production, there's price, there's consumption. All of those are intertwined. We're dealing with massive macroeconomic issues. Technology is making oil more efficient. I'd be interested to see, if we started looking at oil consumption per capita, how that lines up, both nationally and internationally. Yep. I imagine it's probably still going up as well, because you're seeing a lot of the world who previously didn't use oil now is starting to take on technologies that do use oil. So you're running into that and some issues there. But we were also at, like, pre-COVID, yes, oil consumption was continuing to grow, but oil prices were continuing to drop. Like the record low oil prices were not purely COVID related. So
no, and actually it was, like, I think we might have mentioned this at the time, but it was a really weird confluence of events at the time, where Russia and Saudi Arabia were competing with their production, and that was causing a drop in prices right there. And that's something that had nothing to do with COVID. That was just like two giant oil producing companies having a pissing contest.
And will oil prices go up again? Probably. Like that's, we're going to see oil go back up at some point.
I think it's even at $60 or so a barrel right now. So how much, like, none of us can know for sure, like, if and when it hits 100 again. My bet is that it, of course, I think he's right. Like, it is going to go. He said, yes, developed nations. We're not at peak
oil consumption yet. He's right.
Yeah. Yes, developed nations seem to peak out and even decrease consumption, but it's overcome by developing nations' increased usage, which you just mentioned. Yeah.
No, I agree with him completely.
FCL profits will be back to where they were. Yeah, I think that's true.
Possibly. I'm less certain on that piece of it.
Okay. Well, because they're mostly, I guess they do. He says FCL isn't just a refiner; they are also an upstream producer as well. But no, don't feel sorry for a corporation. Regardless,
corporations don't have feelings.
You're spot on, though. Internal combustion is horribly inefficient. Efficiency technology will be a very important stepping stone, and I believe we will see peak oil in the next few decades, but we won't see oil go away in our lifetime. So, I mean, sure.
I'm hoping to live longer than him, I guess. No, I don't know. I don't know when oil. I think oil's use in plastics is going to be around for a while too. Hemp is great, but it's not going to fully replace oil in all of the plastics we have. Yeah. So, like, it's not just burning the shit. So we'll oil consumption may be gone in my lifetime if we have a large enough climate catastrophe and make the planet uninhabitable for humans.
Which
then we'll stop consuming oil. Because there'll be like a few million of us left on the planet at that point.
And we won't have access to oil refineries.
We won't have access to oil refineries. We will. Yeah. Post-apocalyptic technology seems to cap out around steam engines.
Ooh. Yeah. Okay. So he also said on that same show,
Okay.
as usual, very great show. Can't deny that. And he put in brackets, David should be in politics.
I do not think this province is quite ready for a polyamorous, queer, atheist politician yet.
Probably not yet.
I think
We'll have to gauge interest over the next few years. But
yeah. See if I can run for city council. They don't dig deep enough to have big headlines about.
Yeah. Shit. Eh?
So.
Okay, and then on the video, Hateful Sermons and Bad Cops, Richard said, "Ooh, editing is getting better and better." So thank you. I put a lot of time and work into that.
Yeah, good job. Thank you. I've noticed it as well.
That was
I hadn't seen those first comments, but I did see that one because that one must have been a bit older. When I saw that comment, I went and took a look at some of the video, like the podcast, because I haven't been watching them. I was here. I didn't. I didn't need to watch them. I was present. But so I took a look, and yeah, you do a great job, Cory. So thank you.
They're getting better all the time.
Yeah.
And then he wrote a little bit longer one regarding our previous reaction to his previous feedback on guns. So his point was the current solution, quote unquote, increased ban list for guns is not a solution. We have strict laws, and I think they are working as intended in Canada. We need to work on mental health funding, gangs and poverty, and issues that cause gangs to exist, and stricter border controls to help stop the black market importation. How do you do that? Gosh, I don't know. I don't think these are easy solutions.
Honest. Yeah. I think.
Yep.
I think, like, I agree with probably 80 to 90% of what he just said. I think, additional support for mental health. He even said funding, which it's not just magic, right? Like, this takes funding, addressing gangs and poverty and issues that cause gangs to exist. And, like, again, you can't police away poverty. Yeah. You have to hit the underlying issues. I think he's 100% right. With all of that, the idea that the laws we have are good as they are, I think I slightly, I don't necessarily know that I agree there, and I think I said this during the episode too, so I might be repeating myself. We run into this issue that having the United States next door skews our perception of things, right? Because if you look at OECD. High income nations. I'm trying to avoid words like developed, developing, and all that. But like if you look at the OECD list of high income nations, and you look at gun violence plotted on that, for gun violence usually gets clumped as both homicides and suicides. If you look at gun violence as a whole, the United States is just is so high off the chart, it makes everyone else look like they're almost the same. It makes everyone else look almost flat.
Right.
If you
have to get rid of them.
If you take the statistical outlier off the chart, Canada's one of the worst, if not the worst, nation for gun violence amongst OECD nations, high-income nations. We're the worst for homicide, and the combined, I think we were like third or fourth. Like it was definitely one of the worst when we compare ourselves to our peer nations other than the United States. So we do have a gun violence issue. It's not like that's not there. Do I think banning all long arms is the right idea, or banning all guns? No, I don't want to ban all guns. I don't necessarily think we have to go with Australia's or Britain's gun laws. We're not Australia. We're not Britain. We're pretty damn close to Australia in how a lot of our, like, they have farms, they have wilderness, they have wild animals. It's not like those things don't exist in Australia. Handguns, I certainly think, but like, I agree with him that those other issues are significant, but other countries have those too. We're not the only country that doesn't spend sufficient money on mental health care. And once again, I think every single gun owner in this country should have been outraged at the Colton Boushie decision because we have legal precedent. Like, as long as our laws say people don't kill people, guns kill people, that wasn't Gerald Stanley who murdered Colton Boushie. It was a gun that just went off by magic. Yeah. Guns are like the law of Canada now, the law of the land, that court decision. We have a court decision that says guns can kill someone even when used properly by magic. Yeah. So if we believe in magic guns that can murder people on their own, we probably shouldn't have those. Yep. Which Agreed. is why we probably shouldn't have handguns.
Yep. So he goes on to say, if this new gun ban can move the needle, I'll concede I'm wrong. I just don't see how punishing legal gun owners will move the needle. We have no choice but to see if anything changes, as there will be no changes. Yeah. You are correct. Suicide rates triple in homes with guns. So enforcement on storage laws would be effective on that front. Yeah. And then he says, as a conservative, I do really enjoy your balanced approach on topics. This is one of my top favorite shows online. Top 5 favorite shows online.
Yeah. I at times we can rag pretty hard on conservatives. So it's good that it's taken in stride, and that's great to hear.
And I just posted our last episode. It came out on podcast form like 2 days after we recorded. Okay. But it came out on YouTube just today.
Okay. So,
but Richard already watched it and commented, and he said, "Yay, a new episode." and then he asked the question, awesome. Is it odd that a card-carrying conservative is a rabid fan? If I'm a liberal or further left in 10 years, it's your fault.
Excellent.
And I hope that happens.
As I have that effect on people. When I met Cory, you were a conservative, so. You were transitioning.
Definitely closer. Yeah, I was definitely closer.
You were still conservative on a lot of social issues.
Yeah, that's
when it came to anything on some race, gender, and sexual orientation stuff, you were still much further to the right.
Definitely. So. All right. Well, with that said, you can find us at anchor.fm/FromManyPeoples. Our Twitter is at SKPoliticsPod. Our Facebook is facebook.com/FromManyPeoplesStrengthPod. And our Gmail is FromManyPeoples@gmail.com. And you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/FromManyPeoples. So that's that.
Well, thank you again for organizing everything, Cory. You do a great job. As Richard said, all of the technical aspects are getting better and better all the time. So
practice makes perfect, I guess.
All right, I'll see you in 2 weeks.
You bet.